This is a stimulus and Social Security update. Got some important update to share with you. New $200 to $400 monthly checks going out to certain Americans, and retirees in these 12 states risk losing some of their Social Security checks. Elizabeth Warren saying Jerome Powell has failed. Let you know what's going on with the latest of the banking collapse, and I'll give you some other important updates as well. Hope you're having a more than mundane Monday. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel for more daily, straight-to-the-point updates on matters that financially matter to you. So, check please. Americans set to score $200 and $400 monthly checks. See who's eligible for the boost. So this is going on for rising cost of groceries and utilities, and it is being paid out in the city of Chelsea, Massachusetts, ranging from $200 to $400 checks, and payments started going out March 15th, so last week. As part of the Chelsea Eats program, residents are receiving funding, which could go from $200 to $300 to $400 per month, depending on how many people are in their household. So those checks are going out. And then retirees in these 12 states risk losing some of their Social Security checks. So when it comes to Social Security and some of it being taken away, does your state make the list? When you start taking Social Security, don't forget about the taxes. Up to 50% of your benefit is taxable at the federal level for individuals with incomes between $25,000 and $34,000, couples income between $32,000 and $44,000, and 85% of benefits are taxable for individuals and couples whose income exceeds $34,000 to $44,000 respectively. So, but these aren't the only taxes Social Security recipients should account for. In 12 states, you could lose part of your benefits to state taxes. So there are 12 states where Social Security benefits are taxable. So one of them being Colorado. I'll go over these states. Each of them have their own little details. So I'm just going to go over which states are taxing your benefits. Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, West Virginia. So to avoid the taxes, while your Social Security benefits could be subject to income state taxes, remember to look at the overall tax picture. Consider how much you'll pay in capital gains taxes, property taxes, and sales taxes, in addition to taxes on Social Security and other income when planning for retirement. But if you're worried about taxes, consider saving for retirement in Roth IRA or 401k. You'll pay taxes on the money you contribute now, but your withdrawals will be tax-free when you retire and won't cause you to pay more of your Social Security benefit in taxes. All right, moving on. Elizabeth Warren says Jerome Powell has failed as Federal Reserve Chair. So Elizabeth Warren has slammed Federal Reserve Chair as well as a lot of other people. So if you're not familiar, Jerome Powell, he's the one who is raising, or part of his organization as a Federal Reserve, being the chairman, he's in charge. He is raising the rates, which is raising the federal interest rates, which is raising the rates of mortgages, car loans, a lot of other things, which affects everything else in the economy, trying to curb this inflation. But a lot of people are saying he is not doing a good job. I'm trying to find people who are saying he is. Can't really find them. And this could be the cause of the banking collapse, possibly. According to Elizabeth Warren, take a look at what she has to say here.
This week, the government took decisive and forceful actions to stabilize and strengthen public confidence in our financial system. I can reassure the members of the committee that our banking system is sound and that Americans can feel confident that their deposits will be there when they need them.
As Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen testifying on Capitol Hill this week amid growing concerns about the economic impact of Silicon Valley Bank's failure. Joining us now is Senator Elizabeth Warren, a member of the Senate Banking Committee. Good morning, Senator Warren. Thank you for joining us. So,
good morning. Good to be with you.
Great to have you. You heard Secretary Yellen say that she has confidence that the banking system is sound. Although this week we saw troubles with yet another bank, First Republic Bank, getting a $30 billion lifeline from some of the larger banks. Are you as confident as the Secretary that the banking system is sound?
Well, if I can, let me describe what I see as the problem. Starting back in 2016 or so, these multi-billion-dollar banks that, like SVB, in fact, Gary Becker, the CEO of SVB, came to Washington and kept saying, lighten the regulations on us. We're just like tiny little banks, so ease up on the regulations. Donald Trump then ran for president, promising he would ease up on the regulations on these multi-billion-dollar banks. He then was elected president, and he put in a lot of regulators who eased up on banking regulations. Trump then went to Congress, and he said, let's ease up even more, and with the help of both parties, passed laws to roll back on regulations and open the door to easing up even more. Then Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, stepped up and took a flamethrower to the regulations, saying, I'm doing this because Congress let me do it. And what happened was exactly what we should have predicted. And that is the banks, these big multi-billion-dollar banks, loaded up on risk. They boosted their short-term profits. They gave themselves huge bonuses and big salaries, and they exploded their banks. And so where we stand now is now the federal government's got to step back in and back up these multi-billion-dollar banks. And I think there's two halves to this. One half is the government is clearly doing that, but there are a lot of people who are saying, gee, if they've been so lightly regulated for such a long period, it's important to look under the hood and see what's happening with the other banks.
So I want to ask you about that deregulatory push and your effort to try to get some of those regulations back in place. But first, over the weekend, have you had any conversations with the regulators about additional banks at risk of failing?
I'm not going to talk about private conversations, but I think, let me be clear about what I'm calling for right now. I'm calling for an independent investigation of the Fed and the whole regulatory system here. The Fed doesn't just get to do its own investigation. I'm calling for the Fed right now to reverse its weakened regulations and to bear down, to look at these banks with much more scrutiny. And then I'm also calling on Congress, as you rightly say, to roll back the ability of the Fed to weaken regulations, and calling for these CEOs to be held accountable so that we have laws in place to get clawbacks of their bonuses, of their giant salaries. And when you explode a bank, you ought to be banned from banking forever.
Do you think we could see criminal charges?
It depends. I think there will be investigations. Department of Justice has opened an investigation. I think that's appropriate for them to do. We'll see where the facts take them. But we got to take a close look at this. And look, we got to say overall that we can't keep repeating this approach of weakening the regulation over the banks, then stepping in when these giant banks get into trouble. You know, little community banks don't get this benefit. They got to run their shop every single day to make sure they are safe and sound. Their regulators bear down pretty hard on them. It's these giant multi-billion-dollar banks. There was such an irony that Gary Becker came to Washington and said, weaken the regulations because we're just like those tiny little banks that can't pose a risk to the overall economy.
But if I can ask you...
That's obviously not true.
If I can ask you, though, that deregulatory move in 2018 was supported by a number of your Democratic colleagues who still defend their votes. I mean, Senator Bennett said it was a bipartisan compromise. Jeanne Shaheen, Senator Shaheen has defended it. And Angus King has said that reimposing the capital requirements, as your bill would do, to roll back that deregulatory move, could push small and medium-sized banks out of business. How do you respond to your fellow Democrats who are not on board with this?
So remember that in 2018, the bill that was passed had a lot of different provisions, including a lot of provisions that lightened some of the regulations, made life easier for the community banks. And there were people who supported the bill because of that. The part I'm concerned about is called Title IV of the bill, and it's Title IV that says these multi-billion-dollar banks, these banks with $50 billion or more in assets, should have lighter regulation. Those are the banks for whom the principal regulator is the Federal Reserve Bank. And those are the banks that took on these risky practices that ultimately have, it appears, blown up at least 3 banks. And that's the provision I want to see peeled back out of the law. We need tough regulations. You got more than $50 billion, then by golly, you ought to be subjected to stress tests and decent capital requirements and so on.
All right,
What are your thoughts on what Elizabeth Warren has to say? Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. And that is all the news that I have for you today to hopefully brighten your day a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Hi guys, this is Bella. This is the tip of the day. I want to tell you one of my favorite secrets. Adults don't know everything. And also, so I don't too. I know I'm really smart, but I don't really know as much things. You don't know as much things, but we're all gonna learn. I promise. If you keep on working every day, I can. And we all can, and we can all be really smart. And we can all be really smart, like being a teacher or something. And I help kids be smart. Come, let's read.
Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate all of your support. So yesterday, really nice day. It was just me and the girls, had a nice beach day, went to the playground, had some good times. Hopefully you had a great weekend. Got to start the week off now. Bella's doing her homeschooling as I speak. But anyways, hopefully you have a good rest of your day. If you want to check out any of my other videos, click right up here. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, be safe. Thank you for watching.